Welcome back to Deal Flow Live. This is the show where we break down buying and selling businesses. And today we're covering a huge question that might have been on your mind already. Who should you actually listen to when you're thinking about buying a business and you're trying to understand this landscape? And we're going to break down the three critical factors that you need to consider. And we're going to give some actual personal examples of people out there that we think you should actually listen to based on our experience as we're kind of going on this journey with you. So, the first of the three factors we're going to break down.
Before we even do that, who are you again?
I'm Brody Vinson.
And I'm Ryan Santo, and this is Deal Flow Live.
And we're your co-hosts. We kind of just jumped right in there.
Yeah, not even us. We're this is about the other people.
We're feeling jumpy, I guess. But it's because we're excited to talk about this topic.
Oh, yeah.
This is one that's been very much on the forefront for us since we started this journey.
Yeah.
Is who do we actually look to in this? Because if you're trying to venture out into this new space, do this new thing, I've now acquired a business, but when we started this show, it was a new thing for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to figure out, who do we actually listen to? Who's worth getting advice from, and who's just putting out bad information. And they're both out there, I think. Ryan and I have seen both, and we just want to kind of cut through the noise and give you some practical advice on how you pick who you're going to listen to. So the first thing that we thought about when we thought of what are the three critical factors to consider of who you should listen to about buying a business is track record.
Mm-hmm.
What is the person's track record? What have they actually done?
It's a hard thing to kind of dig into with some people because you can't always find a list of everything. That you can't just Google how many deals has this person, how many businesses has X owned. But through just a little bit of Googling, you can usually find if they're in the industry of either, lending, borrowing, or actively still doing business. You can usually figure out what they've owned and what they've done. And usually if they have a website, they'll probably list it. And you can usually kind of figure out if that's true or not based on some LinkedIn, just some light research. So if it's more vague and ambiguous, if it's 3,000 deals done, but you can't really figure out what the deals were, or there's no real content about them, it's likely maybe they weren't exactly the forefront of all those deals. Maybe it was their buddy whose team they were on that did a deal, and they're like, oh, I'll count that one. So you have to be very careful with your research and kind of digging into, okay, what have they actually done and how can I track that?
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things to think about, and especially in this kind of M&A space, is have they been just a broker or a deal maker in this whole thing?
Mm-hmm.
Or have they actually had ownership in these businesses that have traded hands, that they've bought or sold? And we're going to get to an example later in the show on someone who's done both and who we think has an incredible, exceptional track record because of this. But I think if someone's just a deal maker and they haven't really owned businesses themselves, then I would be a little bit cautious about looking to them for some of this advice, because there's kind of a critical layer missing, in our opinion, of just you haven't been in the pits and had that actual tangible experience of what it feels like. And so a person like that who has only been a deal maker might just be telling you what you want to hear. They might just be telling you, oh yeah, it's so easy. It's just, you just financially model it out, you raise the money and you buy it. And that's the tip of the iceberg. Everything else comes afterwards when you actually own the business and you're responsible for it. And maybe you have to get a return of some kind. Maybe you need to make income for yourself. That's the important stuff that comes after.
Many of the people that we follow, if not all of them, because this is a very short list, we're trying to keep it quick and concise, but we have a lot more that we will talk about. This will be a multi-series episode, but these are our top three. This is a content where, if you go and look at their resume, normally they either were somebody who left a job to go and start in an industry. They bought a business just because they wanted to and ended up where they're at because of their successes and some failures that led them to more success. Or they worked in that industry and started figuring out how to solve problems and make things run better. And then they became somebody who did deals, but knew intimately what they were dealing with. So they became an expert and then went out, or they jumped in as an outsider and learn the ropes from the ground up. But they didn't just start as somebody who was purely just saying, I have business A, here's buyer A, I'm just going to connect them, and then that's my experience. Those people usually have a much more, they don't understand what happens afterwards because they're not a back-end person.
That's right. Yeah, and I think just having had that actual hands-on operator experience is something we want to make sure that you guys aren't going to discount when you look for the person.
Yeah, I think what it boils down to is corporate and more larger money players that are large groups that have the capital. I think their information only applies to people who are on the same playing field as them. And for the rest of us that are doing this with, just ground up with bare bones, their playbooks and what they do are completely out of the range of what we can do and what we were able to, and actually what's more realistic for people who are starting out. So, and especially people who do it on a much more smaller, I'll even say more intimate and boutique scale like we do it. So whenever people in institutions kind of put out information, I tend to just kind of gloss by it because it probably doesn't apply to me, and odds are there's a little bit of a too much sparkle on it than I want to hear about the realities of this.
That's right. I loved your point about not focusing on the advice that like the large institutional players are giving, because they're just not really in the same, they're not coming from like the same risk profile that an individual might be coming from.
Yeah.
Now, if you work for a large institutional player and you're watching this, that obviously doesn't apply to you. Maybe go by different rules. But if you're buying this as like a personal business for yourself, you're playing by a whole different set of rules, right? So I think to recap that, really just focusing on the credibility that comes from the track record of the person, something we feel is very important. The next thing I would say is number 2 is the incentive. What is their incentive to be giving you information? Are they a deal maker trying to make a deal? Are they just someone who, there's a lot of these gurus out there now that have some like mastermind or something, some large like high ticket mastermind thing. And they just want to make it sound like buying a business is the easiest thing in the world so that they can get your money for you to join this big mastermind. And there's a lot of that out there now.
I wouldn't say that anyone who has anything for sale is a bad person. I want to get this very clear. Like there's plenty of people out there who we find have great information that charge for their time. So if you want to sit down and talk with them, they do have a premium, but these people are also actively doing business in this space. So if somebody says for an hour of my time, I charge X amount of dollars, that's fine. That's not gating information. That's getting calls from random people going, hey, what do you think of this? And going, that's a bad deal. Why? Do you have any money? No, I don't. That's protecting themselves a little bit. And Brody, you actually do that with your own business now that you've gotten to a point where it's like you have a lot of people calling you. And if people want to sit down one-on-one, odds are there is a fee associated with it. But when I see somebody whose content always ends with a push for a free PDF, a free ebook, a course, and there's multiple levels and all that, I tend to shy away because it feels like there's never going to be enough information given or posted for me to get anywhere. It's all just a funnel to the course. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but I remember somebody saying that majority of people who teach stuff, who are successful in an arena online, are successful because they sold courses, not because they did the thing well. And I think to a degree, that's kind of a signal to me where somebody's at. Obviously, I'm not painting with I'm not saying everyone, but I'm saying in my experience, majority have usually been they're not the quality of individual that I find relevant, and I find their information to be woefully lacking. And we've also both purchased courses from people because we're like, all right, well, maybe this is different. And unfortunately, I think we both have the same information where it's never been any good.
Yeah. And I think it just depends on like who it's coming from too. Like back to the issue of the credibility. I mean, if it's someone who hasn't done it before, it's not going to have information that really helps you.
And it's the internet. So people can maneuver and they can look a certain way and do a certain type of marketing. And you never really know until you're in it. You go, oh, wait, this is a nothing burger I just bought.
Sure. And the other thing I would say is, with the whole incentive thing is you want to think about deal makers. We threw around this term deal makers earlier. So people like business brokers, intermediaries, anyone who profits off of the transaction of the business itself. This is not something where I would say like, don't listen to their advice at all, but you should kind of take it with a grain of salt and know that like there is an incentive inherently for them to make it seem like it's easy to buy a business. Because if you're a buyer and you have money that you're bringing to buy the business, they want you to buy the business. They only get paid many times if you buy the business. That's how most deal maker structures work. So it's just something to be aware of. Again, it's not something that you should just toss out and say, oh, well, this person only wants to get paid, so they're not going to give me any good advice. And again, we're going to mention someone who we think strikes this balance very well that we recommend listening to, and puts out fantastic content, who we think does a great job of not being self-interested despite being a deal maker. However, like there's a lot out there that are just kind of running and gunning, just trying to make deals left and right, over promising, under delivering. This goes for if you're on the buy side or the sell side. If you're talking to a business broker, look out for people making wild claims. Look out for someone just saying, oh yeah, I could get you a 10x multiple on your business. Like, do your research and talk to a few of them and kind of see what the common denominator is. If there's an outlier that's like way above the rest, chances are they're a little bit self-interested.
I think last episode that we did, we did an episode where we talked about how important it is to find a lender who's versed in your industry, because first and foremost, as I've seen a post from a friend of the show and a mentor of ours, Patrick Lang, the deal killer is always the money, and a good lender in your field will get you funded for your deal if it's the right deal. Same thing with a broker. When you're selling a business, you want to find a broker, if possible, that has done multiple successful transactions in your specific business or niche, because they know how to find the right buyers, how to get the deals done, and odds are they're going to be somebody who's going to already have somewhat of a network and know where to find them.
That's right. Yeah, you definitely do want to make sure that you're tapping into that network. What do you think, like when you think of like kind of striking that balance between someone with the incentives to make the deal, but who also probably has good information? What do you think are some of the key questions to ask, or whether you're asking questions of yourself or asking questions of them to kind of get down to the root of, should you listen to them about this thing?
Well, I think when it comes down to, as the buyer talking to a broker to purchase, you're going to be the one answering a lot of questions. If they're not asking questions, then that's already my first
red flag.
Yellow flag, really, because maybe they're just a little bit off. But a good broker asks a lot of questions about you, the buyer who's inquiring. They're going to ask about funding. They're going to ask about experience. They're going to kind of grill you. They're going to, in a very light, kind of casual way, if they're very good about it, because that's how feeling these things out, or naturally, is how they've been as successful as they are. So
yeah, because if they spend all their time,
be a lot of you.
Yeah, because if they spend all of their time talking to buyers who aren't going to go anywhere, they can never get deals done. So they've naturally figured out these ways to filter out bad buyers.
And they understand how to not only source them, but how to make sure they're talking to the right people. So a good broker or somebody who's selling is going to, that initial conversation, and maybe definitely the next few, you're going to be the one answering a lot of those questions before you really get answers to yours. And that's kind of, and if you got to sell a business, that's what you want your broker doing. Vet. Because if you have to listen to every guy who walks in wanting to buy your business, and turns out at the end of it, he's not qualified, he's not experienced, he isn't interested just because he didn't do his research. That's kind of what it is. And that also plays on our thing of, do your research when you talk to your broker, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with them.
So we've got a third thing to look for as well, which is the content that the person is putting out. Now, this might not apply to everyone. You might have just brokers or deal makers or anyone that you might know in your personal life or from your personal network, or even an extension of your personal network that you might be listening to for advice about buying a business. But we're talking about people who are public figures who put out content. You want to be thinking about, what does the content say about them and what they're kind of trying to get done in their goals. If they're putting out content that's kind of sensationalistic and making it seem, again, like buying a business is just this super easy thing. I do it in my sleep. It's anyone can do it. Like someone off the street can do it. And they just try to make it sound incredibly easy. Then you should be a little bit concerned about what angle are they coming from and what are they trying to get done.
Higher production value to me always signals kind of a separation from the reality. because where everybody's coming from, where every single story starts with I had nothing, things were tough. But when you're talking to me with this background and all this other stuff, it is very hard to relate to that. And I already know you're trying to sell me something. It's not hard to make good content nowadays with all the stuff and that we have with lighting and all that stuff. So production value. And
yeah, here we are, two schmucks making a
and
podcast in a room.
It sounds pretty good too. I mean, I think those first minute, the first 60 to 120 seconds of a video is important because you're sitting there, you're looking at this person and you're listening to the information. And I think we both found that the people who do this are not spending time trying to sensationalize, trying to market heavily with like a very egregious amount of effects and all this other stuff. They're sitting down with good lighting and a good mic, and they're saying, here's some realistic stuff. And guess what? It's not the most interesting to the average person, where somebody might click on somebody who's got 1 million YouTube followers, and there's all this clickbait and kind of grabbing content and all this other stuff, and it might grab a lot of people. The content in the first 120 seconds is strictly going to appeal to people who are serious about the industry, wanting to learn and do it. And they're going to give you good info. It's going to be solid, and it's not going to be outlandish claims of how your life is going to 3x your wealth in 20 days. It might just be about how do you find a lender. And I'm not talking about our content. We do this, and we do good content, I think.
Or it might be about some like boring, subtle nuance of it.
Not even boring. Right. If you're really, I think, interested, it's never boring. I don't think we've ever been bored by any of the people we follow. I think to an average person, it might be.
And that's kind of what I'm saying, is it might seem a little bit, especially if you're just getting into this and you're like someone very new to like even exploring buying a business. You probably are interested in it. Maybe it all interests you, the content, but there might be some like very hyper specific, like nuanced thing that they're just talking about in their content. And I tend to find like the ones that are appealing to the content that appeals to like someone who's actually going to get something done tends to be a little bit more like, this is just the facts and figures, and this is how it goes. And it's not like you can buy a business with $0 down. If you ever hear that, run the other way. It's technically true, practically not true.
Somebody did post something where it was true, but the guy who was like, it is true, but then he posted like a 3-paragraph thing of all the things you had to have, which basically you had to already have a successful business to technically leverage and all this other stuff. So the point was, nobody walks in off the street. You got to be a player in the game and established if you want to technically do that. So it's not always false, but most of the people aren't going to tell you the whole truth because it doesn't sell tickets to events.
That's exactly right.
Doesn't get you eating at a free meal for a Maggiano's.
That was personal.
That was, yeah. They know where I live. They have my address. I gave it to them.
That is true. Yeah, you probably gave them more than your address too.
Yeah, I gave them an hour of my time on the phone.
You probably gave them a lot of data too.
They got a lot from me.
Yeah.
Sadly, but
yeah, they're probably tracking this conversation right now.
Good. So I think
might be
we
filing
should probably start to tell these people. I think they probably already know some of the people we follow, probably who they should be following.
Well, the first one right off the bat that we really recommend is our boy Patrick Lang. Been on the show 2 times now, return guest. Maybe we're a little bit biased, but we're biased because he really checks the boxes on all these things. I want to start off by the one thing where you would imagine maybe there would be a hurdle because of his position, which is the incentive. He's incentivized to make deals, to bring buyers and sellers together, to buy a business, and then to ultimately make a commission off of that. Yet, just recently, Ryan had a conversation with him where he explored a potential business, and he said, "You know what? I don't think that's a fit for you. I don't know if that's like the one that I would go for if I was you, and we could find you something." And to me, when I heard that, I just thought, wow, here's a guy who's incentivized, got all the incentive in the world to just get a deal done and let it happen. And he doesn't really have responsibility for what happens after that, as any broker would. Yet he's still kind of taking it upon himself to give good actual advice and say, I don't think with your current situation, it would be easy to run that business from a distance. And that this business might just not be set up for that.
And even on the other side of that, he's thinking about his seller. he's also thinking, is this person going to be a good fit for the culture of this business? Because he really gets into a business and learns the culture, the people. I mean, he learns a lot. So maybe he was, the other part of it is maybe the culture fit that I would be walking into wouldn't be a good one for me. He has to find somebody else. And he's not a transactional man in the sense of he wants one to thing. He looks to build long-standing relationships with successful companies. I mean, he's the guy who we talked about on the show. He told the story. He was a financial planning. He had a whole financial planning company that he was running, left it, bought an HVAC company, learned about HVAC, he had a family at that point too, young kids. He said, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm passionate about it. And then over the last, 20 something years of doing this, 200 plus transactions with almost 150 of them being HVAC. And like he said, he's got the people who he will connect to business. Everybody goes home happy. And then 6 months later, they call up and they say, hey, I need another one. This thing is going great. He doesn't sell if he doesn't think it's not going to be a good one. And he doesn't let people buy if they're not going to be the right fit. So he protects everybody on both sides. And that's why people trust him. And his content reflects that. He talks about the nuances and he's always posting. And that's why I follow him, because when he posts on people's stuff, those are people that I should probably be listening to too.
Yeah. And that's the second thing to talk about too, of him, like of the three things, the incentive thing doesn't really cross any kind of like issues there. It really builds a lot of trust.
Yeah, he's so good. It doesn't need to he's never like, I got to press a sale, because he's doing so much business all the time because he's so good at it and he's developed that rep. There's no pressure to like, oh, I got to sell to make my quota this month. Like it just comes because he's good at what he does. He's established.
And in no diss to him or any like disrespect to his content, but his content is not some like super exciting thing either, right? Like to the average person who's not interested in buying a business, probably not going to watch his content. But his content is, to me, to you, to anyone who's buying a business, very interesting, because it's coming from like these very practical insights of just seeing deals either go right or go wrong, or happen or not happen, or buyers be able to buy a business or not be able to buy a business, sellers be able to sell or not sell. That's the direction that his content comes from. And it's not ever sensationalistic. It's literally just, here's an issue I see, or here's an issue I've seen, here's a thing that's going on, here's a trend in the industry. And I think content like that is the kind of, whenever I've done a deep dive with his content, it's stuff that actually leaves me feeling genuinely more prepared and capable in the space. And then the third thing, the first one that we talked about, is the track record. You mentioned earlier, he's had his own HVAC business. That's such a big thing. He actually bought and I think grew and sold, right? Mm-hmm. He bought, grew, and sold an HVAC company and then became an HVAC specific broker. So he actually lived it and breathed it, and then now is reflecting that experience in his work. And so when you listen to him about this, not only has the guy done over 147, probably now like around closer to 150 HVAC specific sales,
but he's got 200 plus on his belt.
But at least one of them was one that he owned himself and grew and actually lived and breathed the process of. And so that depth and breadth of experience, you can trust that, what he's saying it carries some weight to it.
Also, he did grow like a pool company, like as one of his first things. He grew a pool company to like 3 counties and like 3,000 pools in the course of like 2 years when he was younger, which is just insane as like a side note that he did that.
Yeah. His literal side gig, a side quest that became incredibly successful. The owning of a business brings me to the next kind of figure that I think you should listen to. This one is more of an archetype than a actual person, but it's one that it reminds me of someone in my life, a mentor, a partner of mine. It's my partner Grant is kind of like an example of this archetype, but I want to focus more on the archetype than a specific person here. The next archetype of someone I think you should listen to is someone immediately available, someone who might be immediately available in your personal network or as an extension of it, mm-hmm. who has actually bought and or sold businesses themselves. That's someone who's had the real life experience, and maybe they don't create content. Maybe they don't do any kind of deal making, but they've just done the thing themselves. So the track record is something that's very strong for them. They've actually had a history of doing transactions successfully. ideally on both sides, and ideally for hopefully decades, or at least a decade plus, and have been able to be successful through all of that. That to me is someone who, like, they're going to have some real practical advice. I always think that we as humans learn better through stories too. So someone like that, you're going to be able to ask them questions about their background, about the stories of these transactions, and probably get these really subtle little nuances that you wouldn't get from other places.
I think it's very important that even if it was just somebody whose friend's dad sold his company at one point, if he's willing to talk about it and just tell you about the experience, that's big. Even if it was a small business, even if it was like a tire shop or something, just hearing about how did it go, what did they say, how did it go down. I think that's all very important real life stuff, because those kind of small scale, I say small, but in quotation small, more close to home, relatable transactions are the ones where you can kind of see how it goes from the side of maybe somebody who isn't this polished individual. Maybe he just sold to his buddy and it was just a bunch of handshakes and phone calls, but at least you'll get that real life experience and hear how the whole thing played out with all the information, at least as much as you can get. So close to home, honest information is always good to have.
Absolutely. And, I would say for someone like that, even if they're not putting out content, don't take that. Like, you're watching this on the internet right now, whoever you are tuning in, you're watching content right now. So we know that you're someone who tunes into content and tries to get information about buying businesses from this. So don't take that to me. Don't take the fact that you're watching this and you're getting information to mean that's the only way to get information, right? Talk to people in your personal life as well, if you can get access to them, or just try to go interview people who have had this experience. That's part of why we do that on the show whenever we get a good chance to. We've got a very exciting guest coming up that, should we tell him who it is?
I mean, we should probably, because
we might as well,
yeah,
right?
he's going to be,
we're about to mention him.
Yeah.
So a third person that we recommend listening to in this category is David C. Barnett. He is one of those examples of someone who actually has a pretty decent following in this category. But he kind of checks all of our boxes as well. When I say a decent following, it's say he's probably around like 100,000 total across channels, something like that. So not anything like crazy like your Cody Sanchez's or something like that. Who we're not gonna diss anyone on this. I think I enjoy her content. I enjoy her content. Don't think it's necessarily practical for everyone trying to buy a business. But so he doesn't have a giant following like that. His content isn't sensationalistic. It's not like, hey, anyone can buy a business. So he doesn't have that giant of a following, but he still has a pretty substantial following for the type of content he puts out. I think it's because he's been doing it for a really long time. He's been in the game for a really long time, and he does a great job putting out his content. He's on YouTube. He's on LinkedIn. He's very, very consistent from what I've seen. I've been following him for a couple of years, at least, maybe a few now. And he just puts out this very raw, real content where he's just answering questions that kind of pertain to his experience as a business broker, deal maker, and that sort of thing over the years.
And former business owner. And I believe he owned, one of his stories talks about when he owned a moving company and how all the crazy zaniness that he experienced owning that company, which I think it can't be understated that the pre-qualifier of having built/owned a business and worked in one, and then just the sale and getting into that speaks volumes than somebody who just walks into some place and starts trying to be a broker without ever having built or been in a more small operation. So love his content every week. His content is really much, him and Patrick have very similar, where there is no
flashiness.
It is well produced, quality content that is real life based from people who know what they're doing and have done it over and over again and have seen the signs of good and bad buyers and sellers, and they have plenty of stories to back it up. I mean,
it's well produced. It's not like they went and got it like movie grade made though. And here's what I like about that.
It's easy to digest.
It's very easy to digest. It also, when you consume the content, it feels like they're just your uncle or something, and you're just hanging out, just asking questions and getting information from someone you trust.
It feels personal. It feels like they're talking to you and they're giving you the information as though you were grabbing a cup of coffee or getting a lunch with them, which I think, you know, when there's not a big set or whatever, and it's just a very simple backdrop, it's easy to kind of relax and listen and kind of pay more attention than when there's 42 things to look at.
That's exactly right. And yeah, I've been a huge fan of his content, mostly just because he checks the boxes. He's got the track record of being a business owner, going through all these transactions as a deal maker. He does have the incentive to make deals, but again, going back to the Patrick example, I think he's a great example of someone who does not make it seem like it's easier than it actually is. He actually, I think what I've noticed in his content is he very much does a great job of pushing back against all this like media hype and guru stuff of it's so easy to buy a business. It's so easy to sell a business. Anyone could do it. And he actually says what we know to be true from personal experience, which is it's really fucking hard.
I'd say a lot of his content focuses on why people shouldn't buy or why you won't get qualified, or here's all the reasons that you're not ready, which is good content to put out. I mean, he does a lot. There's a lot of other content that he wraps into it, but there's definitely a theme within the videos of like, he's had lenders come on and be like, if you don't have this, this, and this, don't even call me because we're not going to make a deal because you are not ready for this. And I think it's good for people to hear and kind of reground expectations.
That's exactly right. And the third thing we talked about his track record. We talked about all three: his content, his incentive, his track record, all kind of checks the boxes. Anyone else that you would recommend listening to in this space?
One of the people that I've been digging more into is Tersh Blissett. He's a friend of Patrick's, actually. He does a lot of automation AI for home services businesses, and he has a conference coming up in Savannah, October 3rd through the 5th. Go hit up Patrick's page if you want a discount code for the tickets in Savannah. But he has a history of working in the service industry and HVAC specifically, and he's actually built platforms that do a lot of great automation stuff. And he has a podcast. Patrick's been on that. They've talked about different stuff. So I enjoy his content. He's definitely more. He's probably one of the biggest personalities in the space I've seen. He's got he's got a big presence, and I think that's kind of fun to see that coming more to the forefront. And it's one of those people who I think, you know, their history and their reputation and who they surround themselves with, which I think is kind of the 3.5. Who do these people surround themselves with is important. So that's what speaks to volumes. I've never met him, but who he has around him tells me a lot about him. So definitely somebody who I've been enjoying their content from and kind of learning how to, you know, okay, so I got a business, now what with the service side. So
I love that. We should try to have him on at some point.
Oh, for sure. And I think one more point.
Even mention, we were talking about David C. Barnett before. He's coming on the show.
Yeah, that's right. I thought we mentioned that.
Early next month.
Yeah, early next month.
Mid next month. Middle of September.
He'll be here now. He'll be here in September.
I think it's is it September 23rd? Is that right? I want to tell you guys in case you're wanting to tune in.
You should.
David C. Barnett is coming on the show on Deal Flow Live here, September 23rd, next month. So tune in for that for sure. Go check out some of his content as well.
We'll link it below, all the people we talked about. But I think one thing that strikes out to me about these people, you know, Patrick being sort of more of a mentor to us and somebody who we respect and look up to greatly, and David C. Barnett and his content. The reason that I think they don't have the flashiest content in the world is because that's not who they talk to. The people who are out there doing, making, and creating this kind of reality that, you know, this buy, sell thing, that doesn't appeal to them. They're speaking to real people who are out there doing it, and they themselves are in the field doing this for real and succeeding in a way that's not just making them succeed, but their buyers and their sellers are succeeding. So they're making content for the real person going out there and actually getting it done. They're not making content for the YouTube click, for the YouTube money, for the AdSense. They're here for, if you're trying to do something real, if you want to trust somebody with your most valuable asset, it might be possibly also your biggest purchase of your life. They're doing it for real. They're making content because they want to educate people, but that's not their gig. Their gig is doing this. The content is just, we're just all lucky to get it.
That's exactly right. And if you're watching this and you're trying to figure out who you should listen to when you're thinking about buying a business, we hope this has been kind of a grounding experience for you. I think that's what I would want to say at the end of all of this is we hope this has been kind of grounding, and maybe there's certain people you've been listening to or haven't been listening to, And hopefully this helped give you some direction. Definitely let us know if you still have questions after this. Put them in the comments of this video. Let us know, like, maybe even you want to bring up particular people that you're trying to suss out, and maybe we'd be happy to explore those people for you, whether we've looked into their content or their background or not. But feel free to drop particular examples that you want to see us cover. And hopefully this could be something that leads you to the right people and to get the right information so that you can make the right, most informed decision.
There's entertainment and there's information. You just got to know the difference.
That's exactly right. And hopefully you can get genuine, good information while also being entertained. But what I've found is the boring, actual practical stuff that we like is probably not entertaining to the average person. So I'd say if you find yourself entertained by some of this boring, more practical stuff, to me, probably a good sign that this is something that you should take really seriously, because I mean, you got to have some wiring loose or something to be like us, I would say.
I mean, I would say, how many Nobel Prize laureates do you know? How many names?
I don't know any.
Those are the people that are making things happen in the world. They're not, nobody knows those names for the most part. So like the more underground, just like music, when a music artist is underground, they made their best work. That's kind of how, I'd love to blow these guys up on their socials and get more followers to them. But like when you're seeking them out, usually it's the smaller, more intimate guys that are out there doing it that are like, okay, these people are making content for the game, not for the clicks.
And when we have people like this on the show, like Patrick, who we've had on, David C. Barnett in the future, it's for you. We just want you to be more informed while we're also getting some questions answered. Think of us just kind of like a medium for the information. We just want you to get some more good information so you can make a more informed decision. So if you've enjoyed this, again, drop a comment and let us know what insights you got from this episode. We do this every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Let us know if you want us to cover particular deals. Find us on LinkedIn and drop us a message there. I'm Brody Vinson on LinkedIn, Ryan Santo on LinkedIn. Ryan, anything else you would want to leave the audience with?
We're going to post everybody's links in the comments below so everybody can follow them. Just know what you're getting into with this. It's important. I mean, it sounds like we're just really big fans of just two guys that we know who will talk to us. But I think me and Brody collectively have genuinely been taken in by many different individuals and their marketing and bad actors. So at this point, when we found people that are honest, hardworking, and intelligent and have done this successfully, we tend to really focus in on that. So I just want people to know that we've run our gambit of people that we've listened to, and these people that we talk about and that we interact with, we would fully trust and explicitly know are doing this for real and being very successful in the most honest and transparent way.
That's right. And if you want us to help you out on whatever part of the journey you're on, just again, let us know what you want us to cover. The show is for you. We just want you to get out of it whatever you can and just be here along with us for the journey. So join us next time on Deal Flow Live. If you want to learn more about what Ryan and I are working on, go to scaleforsale.com, www.scaleforsale.com. You can see a little bit more about like what kind of deals we're working on and trying to build out. And until then, we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for tuning in.